The Soundrhyme SP01 has been always in my ears for around 2 weeks now, with an estimated total listening time of more than 24 hours.
Been over 2 weeks now.
I've used the SP01 straight out of my Asus ROG Phone 8's audio jack, unlike many of today's phones, or with a generic amplifier, a cheap Ruizu DAP paired with the same amplifier, and my Arturia Minifuse 1 audio interface. I paired the SP01 with the Dunu SNS ear tips and the stock cable. The Soundrhyme SP01 is quite a new IEM. Being launched on July 1st this year, 2024, the SP01 comes with a 10mm carbon nanotubes plus diamond-like carbon diaphragm dynamic driver. With, upon unscrewing the nozzle, no acoustic tubes leading the sound to the nozzle. Yes! The SP01 boasts replaceable nozzles, coming with the 3 options: balanced, warm, and clear. For this review, I'll be reviewing the SP01 with the balanced nozzles which came installed out of the box. There will be a segment where I compare the nozzles. The SP01 houses the driver with its all-metal shell, with a tasteful accent of blue. Unfortunately, there's one other color, red, which is offered for the SP01. Can I exchange mine for that, please? One thing that I noticed quickly is the size, shape, and fit of the SP01. First wearing these with the stock ear tips it came with was perfect because of the stiffness and length of the ear tips. But I resolved to use wide-bore ear tips on every IEM. So I tried using it with the TRI Clarion tips, which caused problems in the fit and seal. Because of the SP01's relatively short nozzle size and the pliability and smooth texture of the Clarion tips, it would fall out in a matter of minutes and would need readjustments. So I switched to my beloved Dunu SNS ear tips, which almost solved both problems. The fit and seal are good, but only for a couple of hours. In my case, 4 to 5 hours. As to why this number is specific, it was because I was gaming with it for that long. The grease in my ears would cause these to fall out and lose grip on my ear canal, and I would need to readjust it or wait for my ears to dry. But that isn't what I wanted to highlight, since it will vary from person to person, and ear tips to ear tips. The shape is simply phenomenal! The SP01 is the most comfortable IEM I have worn to date. Though I would not want to make too much comparisons in my reviews, the Moondrop Chew 2 comes close second, falling behind because of its sheer small size. The SP01 solves my problem with the chew by sitting on my ear with its semi-in-ear fit or its true wireless earbuds-like shape. I have to confess that years before I entered the IEM world, I was an avid buyer and collector of AirPods Pro clones. Because of that, my ears became accustomed to that shape, size, and fit, and I have been missing that sensation ever since. Even if I had problems with it falling out often, because again, of my greasy ears. The SP01 brought me that sensation of comfort in my ear, and I have admittedly fallen in love with the size and shape. Unfortunately, that is not all of my comments on the comfort of the SP01. So far, it has been 1 con and 1 pro. And I'll have to add another con. Though, it's not in regards to the IEM itself, and is completely solvable. It's the ear rep the in-ear cable. The cable itself is excellent, though it did come with memory out of the box, and it still keeps memory in use. It does exhibit minor microphonics in intense, yes I say intense, walking, but it is better than your typical 2-core cable, and is admittedly one of the best stock cables I have in my possession. CVJ Night Elf stock cable is the best so far, but then the ear hook is a little painful. Though, don't worry about it, it only became a little fatiguing to wear at the same 4 to 5 hour mark for me, and is most probably removable by DIY. In any case, a decent cable that can compete with aftermarket cables. Finally, the sound. The SP01 to my ears has a balanced V-shaped sound signature, which gave me a satisfying listen at 40 to 70% volume. This IEM is one of the easier IEMs to drive. In my collection, the easiest to drive, needing not much volume to sound engaging. But make no mistake, the SP01 is decently scalable, keeping its composure at 70 to 85% volume. However, going higher than that makes the SP01 quite overexcited, especially in the presence region. One phenomenon I've noticed going full volume with the SP01 is the bass. I could feel the rumble at 90 to 100% volume, which is incredible. I could not, and should not, listen at this volume. But it is impressive that the SP01 was able to bring out such performance. If SP01 were to made into a bass headset, either by EQ or Soundrhyme releasing a bass version of this, I would get it. I wish Soundrhyme would be able to make this possible. Now, leaving that tangent, the bass feels spacious and well controlled. For me, it is on the edge of having that rumble, and knowing the capabilities of the driver, the tuning does well to put it under control. Though, I don't think this is a bass headset, but bass heads may appreciate this, but probably won't be satisfied. And that's from someone who loves bass. But for those who are looking for a good balance of bass, this is adequate for that. But why isn't it perfect? For me, it is lacking rumble and texture. But don't misunderstand this for being muddy or fuzzy. It is not any of that. It just felt that it was a tinge close to that quality that would impress. It was just missing that final X factor. But because of that, the bass will never overwhelm, but instead set the depth and stage, and complement the frequency range. I'm sure many will find this bass perfect, since it arrives and decays naturally, and isn't overbearing or visceral. But for me, it only needed a little bit more texture, oomph, and rumble. The mids of the SP01 sounded smooth, non-fatiguing, and inoffensive. The vocals have appropriate warmth and energy for both male and female vocals. Though, due to the V-shaped nature of the tuning, percussion instruments like snares sounded a little more pushed back. Thus, to me, the middle of the mids, the mid-mids, sound scooped out when listening at low volumes. And for me, that makes vocals, instruments, and percussions sound a little hollow and shallow. But the good trade-off is that the vocals and guitars sound more forward and energetic. Even if the percussions sound a tad thin, the vocals never sounded thin to me with the SP01. And to build upon the tuning masterclass, vocals to me do indeed sound shouty, but because of the warmth and bass that complements it, it was never a tiring listen, even at 80% volume. To my ears, there is sibilance, but the sibilance is something that is needed for the attenuation of vocals in my opinion. So, when I say there is appropriate sibilance, to many others, that would be no sibilance at all. Overall, the upper mids are presented forwardly, smoothly, and brilliantly. The treble region appropriately follows the energy of the upper mids, though it wouldn't be a detailed beast, but it isn't devoid of micro details and nuances. Even if it has a V-shaped sound signature, it does not throw away or mask the tiny nuances in the music. To me, cymbals and electronic elements are pushed further back, but because of that, I could hear more of the accompanying guitars that are made to be far back into the mix. This does affect the perceived imaging, stage, and separation. The SP01 seems to have dulled out all three aspects in exchange for a smoother, inoffensive, and non-fatiguing listen, which, in my opinion, is a good balance. Any audio peripheral is good for gaming, and it depends on one's priorities and genre of games. I use the SP01 in competitive first-person shooter games, and have not found much to be a standout in the sea of IEMs, and that is not to say that it is horrible. It has just nothing special going towards using it for gaming. Soundstage, however, is one of the good ones I've heard. It is not as amazing as a planar, but it does impress you with what a single dynamic driver could do. But the limitations do indeed start to show in the face of planar, multiple drivers, and hybrid sets. This is not to say that the stage is small and shallow, it is none of that. Soundrhyme has done a great job with tuning that makes the stage as wide and deep as possible with a singular driver, which is what impresses me. They have fine-tuned the presence and air region to achieve that X factor in the treble, and I'd love to try out other sets from them that either have a different or a larger driver or a hybrid set with the same exact tuning. Now, a quick comparison between the balance and the other two nozzles. The warm nozzle, compared to the balanced nozzle, sounded slightly more bassy, thumpy, rumbly, and visceral. This is the nozzle I'll probably be sticking with after this review. But what does not sound as slight is the soundstage. The soundstage sounds closer in, increasing in depth, but decreasing in width. Micro details are pushed further back, but they can still be heard with a little more focus and effort. Sibilance almost becomes non-existent to me, but that also causes the imaging and treble instruments to sound duller. Fortunately, the vocals still keep their forwardness, but sound a little more excited and a little more smoother. The clear nozzle sounds similar, if not the same, as the balanced nozzle, except now, the sibilance is more attenuated. It is still tolerable and appropriate in levels, but I've noticed more vocal sibilance than before. For example is the song Charming by Muche. Admittedly, I had not listened to the IEMs I had before I listened to this song, but the SP01 with a clear nozzle is one of the first IEMs where I noticed sibilance in this track. A track and vocalist where I rarely heard any sibilance from. But this results in sharper vocal presence and crispier and more satisfying cymbals. The cymbal crashes sound a notch more splashy and the treble transients sparkly. If it wasn't for the warm nozzle which gave me that comfy bass, I would be sticking with a clear nozzle. I would be switching to this nozzle however, if I'm in the mood to hear more details more effortlessly. At its price of $89, one would argue it is the best budget set to date, so far. Maybe even better than its competitors that have the same nozzle replacing feature. Admittedly, this is my first IEM at this price range, and I have heard a handful of IEMs that are at or below $60. And honestly, I was more impressed with some IEMs below that price range, like the CVJ Night Elf with its almost out-of-the-head soundstage, and KZPR3 with its detail retrieval, and the 7Hz Sonus with its impressive imaging. The SP01 sounds like a middle-of-the-road IEM with its V-shaped sound signature, but makes itself more versatile than it already is with the choices of nozzles and possible modding options. I cannot give a solid must-buy recommendation due to the price and what it offers, packaging, features, and accessories aside. But for someone who is looking for something of quality in this price range, or someone who is looking for a comfortable feeling, fitting, and sounding IEM, the SP01 should be at the top of your considerations. Thank you very much for listening to my review, and I hope it was helpful. Please feel free to leave any comments, questions, and feedback for the video. Now, it's time to get out!